Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Hare Krishna. Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. All of you who have come here to this temple and all those who have joined us online from various places around the world, we welcome you heartily for this gathering where we intend to come closer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which brings satisfaction to the heart. The names of the Supreme is an ancient one. In all traditions of the world, there's a concept of the holy name of God. God is the supreme being, and He's absolute. Means, in part, that His name is the same as Himself, and that by singing the name of God with sincerity, one achieves divine communion with the Lord. This is one of the chief doctrines of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who the Gaudiya Vaishnavas consider the most recent incarnation of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this world, who's described in the Srimad-Bhagavatam as the Chana avatar, where the avatar means one who descends from a higher position to a lower one in order to give some benediction. And Chana means covered. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to the world as a devotee, although He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. This is His Acharya Lila, or His way of showing us the example of how we ourselves can become devotees of Krishna. When Krishna came to this world, He gave us the Bhagavad Gita. And He displayed His divine pastimes in Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka. In the Bhagavad Gita, He says, Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam raja aham tang sarva papipyo mukshayishami masuchaha. Just surrender to me. Abandon all other ways of trying to adjust one's life in this material world, adjust your life in this material world, and give yourself, mind, body, soul, to me. I will deliver you. Do not worry, do not fear, do not hesitate. Krishna noticed, however, that only a handful of people listened to this message. And therefore, Kaviraj Goswami, the author of the biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, writes, Anarpita charim chirat karane vatir nakalao samarpayitun unutto jwala rasam swapakti shriyam. That Krishna Himself considered, for a long time, I've not given this sublime information and the process by which one can become an intimate associate of the Lord, even a lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, He came back again as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the intention of giving everyone in the world, in whatever position of life they are, as educated, uneducated, coming from good families within the Varnashrama, or those who are in far-flung places, who have no connection with any training in Vedic culture or even any knowledge of God. To all them, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu extended Himself and a process through which they could experience for themselves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and through which they would fulfill all the other requirements that are mentioned in the Vedas for one to become a properly civilized, what to speak of, spiritualized personality. This is the power of the chanting of the holy names of God as mentioned in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sri Devahuti says that when you chant the holy names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is evidence that you've already graduated from other kinds of methods mentioned in the Vedas. For instance, performing sacrifice, giving in charity, traveling to holy places. Just as much as if you see your best friend sitting in a courtroom as the judge, holding a gavel, wearing the gown, giving sentences, you know that he or she has already gone to law school. So in a similar way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and teaches from the Srimad-Bhagavatam and the other Shastras, yet Brahma Sakshat Krita Nishchayapi Vinashamayati Vinam Nabhogai Paiti Nama Spuranina Tate Prarabdha Karmeti Virauti Vedaha. That one who takes the direct process of chanting the holy names of God with sincerity is able to overcome one's previous karmas and becomes designated as beyond even a Brahmana. One becomes designated as a Vaishnava, or one who is a lover of God, who is in direct contact with God. And this is declared in all of the Vedas for those who know how to mine the Vedas for the most pertinent and important information, which means how to come in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the ultimate purpose of the Vedas. So we're dedicated here in this ISKCON society to following our Guru Varga, our Guru Parampara, a line of teachers that have come and can be traced back to Krishna himself. Our line comes down through Lord Brahma, the first created living being within the universe. Is passed down to his son Narada, then to Vyasadeva, Madhva, through all the disciples of Madhva, to Madhavendra Puri, then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then coming through the direct disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shad Goswami, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Through Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vibhushan, coming down in the present age through Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who extended himself to people all over the world in such a way that he could also train even Westerners who had no connection with the Vedic culture to become perfect Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, and Gurus, and represent the Guru Parampara. This is why this is a living movement in which one feels the electricity coming from the Parampara, electricity in the form of spiritual potency. This is the ultimate judge when you touch a wire, whether it's on or not. I had that experience the other day, not personally, but my handyman wanted to know if the plug outside my kutir worked or not. And when he touched it, he said, well, part of it's working. Because he felt it pretty strongly. And this is something to be experienced if one enters into the spiritual atmosphere with a sincere desire to know the Supreme and follows the process which has been passed down through the authorized chain, which is corroborated by the Vedic Shastra and by the sadhus, the saintly people who have followed the process over millennia, then anyone from any position in life can feel for oneself improvement, meaning that one can overcome the base desires that reside within the heart and within the senses, can become self-determining in one's life, which is the preliminary sign that one is advancing spiritually. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yashuvairagyam Jnanam Chayirahetukam. When one serves the Lord directly, one receives concomitant benefits, namely that one is able to remain detached from those things which ordinarily would be very difficult to overcome. The addictions of the world through our senses, 10 hours of screen time, many different kinds of insignificant attachments that are easily to catch on to here in this world and very difficult to get rid of, can more easily or very easily, depending on one's application, be achieved through the process of bona fide spiritual life, as confirmed also in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bhakti Parishanubhavo Viraktiranyata Traishatrika Ekakala, Prapadyamanasya Tashnata Sus Tushti Pushti Shuddha Payonugasam. The Yogendras say that spiritual life is very much like eating a feast, a good food, a good meal. You feel nourishment, satisfaction, your hunger goes away with every bite, and you know it for yourself. No one needs to come in from outside and give you a certificate to tell you what's happening. In a similar way, when one applies him or herself to the process of spiritual life, one feels a connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, begins to see his hand in all parts of his or her life, and very importantly, virakti, feels detached from those things which he or she formerly was not able to give up. So the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is a mantra that comes from the Kalisantarana Upanishad. Actually, it doesn't come from there. It's an eternal mantra, but the Kalisantarana Upanishad puts it forward as the panacea, which means the remedial process for any of our ills. And perhaps we have some ills, means some complications, difficulties in our lives, things that are very difficult to overcome. Possible? It says that if you chant this mantra, you'll be able to overcome all the obstacles in the age of Kali Yuga. What's more, our immediate acharyas coming after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have revealed the power of the holy name as more than being the way to overcome material obstacles or even spiritual obstacles, but a means through which one can develop full-blown love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 relationships, either in Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya Ras. These are the 5 relationships that we see prevalent in this world, which originate in the spiritual world. And by chanting the holy names of the Lord, especially the Mahamantra, one can revive one's original loving relationship with the Lord. This resides within the heart of every living being, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu states in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddhachite Kare Udoy. Love of God is already there within the heart of every living entity. It needs to be revived only. You don't need something from some other place, nothing extra to be added. It's our nature eternally. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra is that process, the chanting of which revives our original love for God within the heart. This is the goal of not only the process given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but one could argue that it is the ultimate goal of life for everybody. Prema Pumarto Mahan, to attain a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, just after we've chanted together the Mahamantra. That is, if you agree to any of the things I've said just now, and you would also agree to enter into a kirtan together at this point. Kirtan meaning the congregational chanting of the holy names of God. Does anyone have any objection to this? Well, all those who are interested in experimenting with direct communion with the Supreme Personality of God through the chanting of His divine names, an ancient process which is authorized by all the Vedic literature and given to us personally by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, passed down through our disciplic succession, coming directly from Srila Prabhupada and his followers to people all over the world. Please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you again for joining us here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're dedicated to the process of Krishna consciousness as passed down by Lord Sri Krishna himself, especially through the Bhagavad Gita, and the refined teachings of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which tell about the ways in which, when we follow the Bhagavad Gita, we come to the rarefied position of having a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I would argue that that is actually the only, not only safe place, but only satisfactory place that we can live. That is, in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I've been thinking recently about what it means to be personal. We say these things all the time about personal. And I would like to present a case before you now, is that personal is what we all want. The first, I'm going to read something which is a review of the Bhagavad Gita written by a Catholic monk named Thomas Merton. And he says the following: there are facile generalizations about Hindu religion current in the West, which it would be well to take with extreme reserve. For instance, the statement that for the Hindu, there is no personal God. On the contrary, the mysticism of bhakti yoga is a mysticism of effective devotion and of ecstatic union with God under the most personal and human forms, sometimes very reminiscent of the bridal mysticism of so many Western mystics. The Bhagavad Gita is a doctrine of pure love, resembling in many points that preached by Saint Bernard Tauler, Fanello, and many other Western mystics. The Gita, an ancient Sanskrit philosophical poem, preaches a contemplative way of serenity, detachment, personal devotion to God under the form of the Lord Krishna, and expressed most of all in detached activity, work done without concern for results, but with the pure intention of fulfilling the will of God. It is certain that the Bhagavad Gita is just as much entitled to a place in a college course on humanities as Plato or Homer, and it is a wonder that the lofty religious literature of the East has not been numbered among the great books, quote unquote, which now form the basis of a liberal education, at least in America. From Thomas Merton's essay, The Inner Experienced. So we make reference to personality throughout our lives in various phrases that we take for granted. Have you ever mentioned as a superlative, I met such and such in person? No, I met him in person. Have you ever used the phrase or heard it, the personal touch? Yes. As is stated in some research that I was looking through about personal communication, email is great, but face-to-face meetings are 34 times more successful, authentic, and trust-building. Going to practical experiences we have in our life with the personal touch. Have you ever received a gift that was not very personal? 3 people, 4? Yes. Was it a re-gift? Yes. Did you give it to them in the first place and they forgot? Or perhaps we saw it as an afterthought. It was an obligatory gift that we received. Versus someone ascertain what is your heart's desire, figured it out even without asking you, gave it to you at the right time, the right circumstances, the right color, the right mood, everything. And how did it feel? We call this a personalized gift. In fact, there's a huge industry now, personalizing gifts. You give someone a little goblet, and on it, it'll have your initials. Our dentist once gave us a little silver cup when I graduated from the university. His wife, our dentist, gave me a little cup, had my initials on it. And I still have it on my desk. I couldn't get rid of it. It has my initials on it. The whole industry of personalized gifts argue that they're better. And they may have a point. We appreciate it more when we see ourselves, when we see someone's intention that they gave us a personal gift. Everybody knows about personalized customer service. We feel it when there's an actual caring person on the other side. Have you ever been put on hold? And then after a long time, you get somebody who doesn't really seem to care about you. It's not personal to them. It's only a job. And then when they decide to transfer you to someone else, you get cut off. These are some of the most disheartening and discouraging of experiences we have, because what's lacking? The personal touch. A feeling that someone there actually cares about me. Therefore, people are trained in personalized customer service. They may be doing it officially. Nonetheless, we still feel it because some sort of intention is there to personalize, and that's what makes it different. For instance, in the realm of training people for customer service, the attendant must know and remember the customer's name. Hello, William. Yes, William. Thank you very much, Vijay. Also, personalized customer service rewards customers for their loyal service. They notice that you were there last year. They notice you were there for the last 10 years, and they give you some gift. It doesn't matter what it is, practically. But they remembered you because you were loyal. They gave you something. People hang on to a particular company over many, many years because somebody remembered them. Someone gave that personal touch because they rewarded the loyalty. Have you ever received unexpectedly from some business entity a personalized note, personally handwritten note? Has it ever happened? Yes. Is it rare? Yes. But it's very special, isn't it? So, in the realm of personalized marketing, it is said personal relationships are always the key to good business. This is not a class about business, but I'm making the case from various aspects of our lives that the personal touch is what we seek ultimately in everything. Therefore, again, personal relationships are always the key to good business. You can buy networking, you can't buy friendships. Then when we go into the realm of medicine, bedside manner. Actually, there have been many studies that show that when there's a good bedside manner from a doctor, healing takes place much more quickly. When you go to a doctor, a hospital, and suddenly you feel that they really don't care about you, then all the systems in your body become depressed. Your mind, your immune system, it begins to stagger under the oppression of not being treated like a person. I've seen it with elderly people who have some kind of ailment and they go into the hospital and they're treated like a non-entity. People who have had elegant careers, illustrious in their lives, lifestyles, and as they grow old, then they go into a so-called care facility, and someone who really doesn't care about them treats them like just another machine. And practically they wither under that kind of treatment. On the other hand, if a doctor treats a patient with even a little bit more care, some compassion, feeling that, oh, you're in a very rough situation right now, and they listen to you. In fact, there's a code for doctors and health caregivers of all kinds that they should connect with patients personally. This begins the healing process and sustains it. In the code it says you should acknowledge the people, establish eye contact, and smile. That's a very personal thing, isn't it? Use the patient's name. Use a friendly, helpful tone of voice. Say please and thank you. Listen. Don't interrupt. Describe what's going to happen. Answer questions with patience. Let patients know about expected delays. Speak slowly. Repeat as necessary. Ask, were all your questions answered? Did you understand? And then reconnect. Again, this is not a presentation about healthcare. It's a presentation about the most primal need that every one of us has, and that is a personal connection. That is the most meaningful in every situation. In fact, we find around the world that people, when they're disrespected, will form an enmity against others, other countries, other people, other members of the family, if they're not respected. What is respect? It's another form of being personal, of actually appreciating that the person has value. That's personal. Without that, we feel void. Regarding healing and bedside manner, quote, patients who feel they are listened to and are comfortable are less likely to develop complications or need readmission, according to case studies in the United States. They suggest, do the studies, that death rates are lowered and there are better long-term prospects for patients when they've been treated with respect, with dignity, with care, personally. Now, something I notice all the time, and this is actually how I got into this bent about personalism and looking into the personal touch. When I pick up the mail, it comes right through our door and onto the floor. Mail slots on our door. I could see from across the room which things are junk, or at least not interesting to me, and which things I'm going to immediately open. Which do you think the things are that I will immediately open? Handwritten. If I see some handwriting, and you can tell, the eye is very powerful. It's almost like the face recognition on a camera. You just point and go like, yep. You can notice it from across the room. There's a letter, there's a postcard, there's something with human handwriting on it. As soon as I see that across the room, then I think, oh, I'm going for that. And I take it, I sit down immediately, say, what was that person trying to say to me? And actually what sparked this was yesterday I opened the door, I looked down at the mail, and there was something that I thought was handwritten. And I picked it up, and it was computer generated. And I opened it anyway. And I thought, yes, they know. Marketers know that if it's handwritten, and this was computer generated, but if it is handwritten, or it looks like it's handwritten, there's something in the human psyche that immediately says, this is important. This is meaningful. This is touching even, that something was handwritten. Someone took a moment to write something to me personally. And then I began thinking, what's behind that? What is behind it? Srila Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Devotion, in the primary stage, a child loves his parents, then his brothers and sisters. And as he daily grows up, he begins to love his family, society, community, country, nation, or even the whole human society. But the loving propensity is not satisfied even by loving all human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of the nectar of devotion which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows or relationships. Our loving propensity expands just like a vibration of light or air expands, but we do not know where it ends. The nectar of devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. We have failed to create peace and harmony in human society even by such great attempts as the United Nations because we do not know the right method. The method is very simple, but one has to understand it with a cool head. The nectar of devotion teaches all men how to perform the simple and natural method of loving Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we learn how to love Krishna, then it is very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. It is like pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying food to one's stomach. The method of pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying foodstuff to the stomach is universally scientific and practical, as every one of us has experienced. So I bring this up because the process of bhakti, as taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is startlingly personal. The first time that I picked up a literature produced by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which was created by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. That is, the society was created by him for the purpose of giving everyone in the world the opportunity of hearing about and knowing personally the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Yeneir vindaksha vimuktamaninas tvayasta bhava devashudha puraya aruya krishna paramparam tata patantyato nadrita yushmadangraya. Whatever process you adopt in this lifetime to elevate yourself to a position where you feel liberated is incomplete and impure if it doesn't include the personal touch, which is devotion to the personality of God. Unless one develops attachment for that personal relationship, one will remain unsatisfied. And a living entity who's unsatisfied in the position he or she is in now will eventually fall to another position, which is to engage in sense gratification in the material world and take shelter of an inferior process and a lower energy of life. Therefore, the process of bhakti, as given through this disciplic succession, coming from Krishna down through many exalted saints who had a personal relationship with Krishna and presented in the modern day through the process of bhakti yoga, is specifically meant for us to fix our attention on Krishna, His beautiful form, His name, His pastimes, and His devotees. And the theory is that if you do this, you will find for yourself the kind of satisfaction that you're looking for, and that giving your energy to the process of loving Krishna in the various ways by practicing bhakti yoga, starting with hearing, chanting, and remembering Him, will fully satisfy your soul because it is directly personal. It is the most personal of all processes, and it is not understood well unless one has the association of pure devotees. Because if one speculates to understand God, the highest position that we can come to through mental speculation is to assume incorrectly that God's ultimate form is impersonal. Only by the association of pure devotees, those who already have the semblance, at least, of love for God and have been touched personally by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by experiencing communion with him through chanting his holy names, through serving him selflessly, can impart this most precious of processes into our life, which is the process of bhakti yoga. So now I'll take a few reflections, anything that you heard so far that's stuck in your mind, and then we'll expand a little bit upon it, and then we'll have some more chanting, and we'll have a moment to, for those of you who'd like to meet somebody new here at ISV, we'll take a few minutes so everyone can introduce themselves to someone they haven't met before. Does that sound scary? Yes, it does. So that's good. All right, so now we'll take some reflections. What did you hear so far that stuck in your mind or that you wanted to expand upon a little bit more by asking a question? Bali Mardan Prabhu, right in front of Shri Shri Radha Madam Mohan, wearing a, looks like a blue bead bag. Aquamarine with orange accent or saffron.
New style, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Such a wonderful talk on this personal relationship. So I like all the points, but wanted to highlight few, which you mentioned about the signature, personal or computer-generated, automated signature, because that gives you attention. I also happen to open that kind of mail because, yes, it is really, oh, I thought somebody is writing my name and sending it. So that gives, because somebody has to connect properly, that gives the one. And the second thing you mentioned about the write-up by the Christian poet or someone, I forgot.
Yes, Thomas Merton.
Thomas Merton, yeah.
Catholic monk.
Very beautifully written. I was thinking the first statement when you mentioned that the Hindus believe in the impersonal God, but in the subsequent part, he really expressed the devotion and personal relationship with Lord Krishna, and that gives the sentiment of the outcome of the Bhagavad Gita. Very nicely said.
Oh, thank you. And you mentioned the phrase properly connected. And this is what yoga means, to be properly connected. Yes, we're connected. That's our nature, to be connected. But I connect here, there, and everywhere, as the song from the 60s said, looking for love in all the wrong places. This is the theme of a theme of the Bhagavad Gita also. Krishna says that you're looking in all the wrong places for love. Yes, you're a lover. Yes, you become attached. You can't become detached, ultimately. He says, Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtati karma krit karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti jairagunai. Because your nature is to be attached. And if you transfer that attachment and become properly connected to the object that can reciprocate your love, to the person who can reciprocate your love, then you'll always be happy, no matter what situation you're in. And if you're disconnected from that personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Bhayam dvitiya abhinibesha tasyad, ishad ape tasya viparyayo smriti. You'll always be fearful and wondering, what's in this life for me? Everything has disappointed me. Every relationship will disappoint me. Even when I'm in the best of relationships, there's, in the core of my heart, in the pit of my stomach, there's a worry that I'll be separated from this relationship, and therefore there's fear. But when we properly connect to Krishna, of whom we're an eternal part and parcel and have an intimate relationship, as Sri Brahma Samhita says, Sanitya Nitya Sambandha Prakritischa Paraivasa. We have an eternal kinship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then that fear immediately dissipates. We have to turn our attention back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thank you, Bali Mardan Prabhu. We have Shamalangi, and then Shraddha, and then Gandharvika. 1, 2, 3, 4.
When you were mentioning about the doctor, just his behavior with the patient can cure more than enough. I was just remembering one of my cousins who was not a very good student, but somehow he struggled and he entered the medical school. He had to try it twice or thrice, and he couldn't even go much into higher studies because he was actually not a very good student. But today he's one of the most successful doctors in my hometown. just because of his behavior, he really knows how to connect with the patients. He'll speak their language. He knows quite a few languages. And, you know, in India, how you like talk to elders like mother, or, you know, he really knows, and he's actually very caring. He's a very nice person. So, and now he rose also in a very senior position. And even when I went to his hospital, this Tata Main Hospital in Jamshedpur, India, so everybody, whoever came to know I am his cousin, they would like treat me with a lot of respect. So just because of his attitude and, you know, behaviors with the parents, with the patients. So I just thought of mentioning
Such an important point, very practical. We hear about Krishna in the Nectar of Devotion, how he speaks the language of every living entity. That's a very personal thing when you know someone's language. Even if you know one word, you can meet somebody from another country, you say, ni hao, and there's like, ha. It goes right to the heart. And the attitude of the person that we meet, the attitude of compassion that someone has, immediately opens our heart and the healing begins. When my father died, I was in Vrindavan. I was staying in Atma Shakti's flat up in the MVT, and Nirkula was back in America at that time, and we knew he was going to pass sometime, but then she called me. I got the call maybe at 2 in the morning or something like that, and you know, she just said, he's gone. And I never knew what it would feel like when my father left, but then I knew, and I felt vacant. And I walked downstairs at about 4 a.m., and the residents down there who were on their way to Mangalarti just looked at me and they said, what's wrong? It must have been on my face. And I said, my father just died. And one of the senior brahmacharis was just walking by and heard me say that. He immediately turned around and came over and gave me a big embrace. And he said, oh, and he just held me for a minute, big brahmachari. And it was such a healing experience. And he said, oh, your dear father is gone. And because of that, I was immediately able to adjust myself throughout my whole body. It was visceral, that someone had given me that personal attention. And Krishna's like that. He's there actually within the heart of every living entity at every moment. His embrace is with us in everything that we do in our lives. And if we come to know that that's true, the more that we turn our attention towards Krishna and realize that it's He behind all compassionate beings who's expressing Himself to us. And as he says in the Ramayana, if even one time a person turns toward me and says, I take shelter of you, then from that moment onward, I make that person my ward. I always protect him and take care of him. This is the attitude of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the kinds of compassion and personal touch that we see in others is a reflection, Prabhupada says, of the actual compassion that comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For instance, he says, observe the love of a mother, and now consider millions of times that compassion. That's the compassion of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So much so that Sri Uddhava says in the Bhagavatam, who would take shelter of anybody else except for Krishna? He's so compassionate that when Putana came to kill him, he thought, well, at least she dressed like my mother. And therefore he gave her eternal relationship in the spiritual world. So the devotees are all saying, just see Krishna's compassion.
All right. What should I call you? Prabhuji, Swamiji?
Just not late for prasadam, that's all.
All right. Okay. So my question is, for everything in life, if we are doing something professionally or personally or anything, we need motivation. So for life, what motivation what I would see that I don't see motivation in this world because there's a lot of pain. And the way I'm wired, I see there's a lot of when I see other people in pain, it hurts me. And I don't know how it hurts me, but it hurts me. And not just animals, not just people, but animals too. So because it is written in Gita, that Bhagavad Gita, that every soul, in every creature, the soul is the same as me, as in me, which means that we are the same soul, which means we are the same being. Is that correct?
We're part of the same being. It's a
so,
little subtle.
So what motivation, my question is that what motivation do I have to keep living if I see this kind of world? It doesn't motivate me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't motivate me to take another step and buy a big house or do this, do that. It doesn't motivate me at all.
Understand.
To do anything.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, we first should know what the goal of life is. This is important because without a goal, we become morose and our path is uncertain in life. And there are many complexities in the world, naturally. As long as I have a material body, you could pass the mic up here because she's next. As long as I'm in a material body, I'm going to experience complexities. And if I know that the goal of life, of human life, is to reconnect with Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I can understand his words from the Bhagavad Gita, that as I go through this world, there'll be many difficulties, sufferings, but the ultimate goal is not to be comfortable here in this world, Krishna says, but is to use this very short life to reconnect. And when we can see that clearly, then even the sufferings or the obstacles become an impetus for us to take more shelter of Krishna. As Queen Kunti, one of the great devotees of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, says, let the calamities come more and more in my life, because when they come, then I take actual shelter of Krishna. If we've experienced before, I may be performing official devotional service or going through the motions. I may feel even a plateau that I'm going along by momentum. But when something very disturbing happens in my life and I have nowhere else to turn, I may then sincerely fall on my knees and pray, "Oh my Lord, please help me." There are various motivations that we have even as we're moving towards the ultimate goal. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's a hierarchy of motivations we have in our life. The first and the lowest on the rung of the hierarchy is fear. Above fear is prospect. Prospect means I serve God because I'm going to get something. I put $1 in the hundi because I'll get 40 back. And why not put 100? Because I'll get 400 back, and so forth. Above that is duty. That's in the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness means that I know what's the right thing to do, and I do it. Despite any obstacles, despite any inconvenience to me. This is the emblem of the mode of goodness. And above that motivation, the highest of all is love. When you love someone, when a mother loves her child, it doesn't matter that the child keeps her up all night. It doesn't matter that the child complains that you brought the wrong kind of cereal. And when you bring the right kind, she doesn't like that either. The mother goes on loving the child no matter what. And that kind of motivation is what most resembles the kind of love that is described in the Srimad-Bhagavatam that the devotees have for God. And that is unmotivated and uninterrupted service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we know the goal and we're clear about it, by studying the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad-Bhagavatam, associating with those who are on the path of bhakti, then we can also pick up the same thread. And what you said about compassion is exactly what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, is the emblem of the most perfect devotee. He says in the 6th chapter, when he's speaking about the yogi, Atmaupam yena sarvatra samam pashati yojana, sukham vayariva dukam sayogi paramo mataha. Paramo means the best yogi. And that is that he or she has compassion for others, sees that other souls are also parts and parcel of Krishna. We're not Krishna, we're part of Krishna. We're same in quality, but different in quantity. Just like sparks of a fire are fire-like, but they're not the fire. We're similarly part of Krishna. So all souls are similar to us because they're all the same quality, but they're not Krishna. Even combinedly, they're not Krishna. Only Krishna is Krishna, and we're part of Krishna. And when we see that other souls are struggling with the embodied experience, and we know what the solution is, we feel compassion for them. Even if we don't know the solution, we may feel compassion. But when we do, then we have an active life of reaching out to others and feeling satisfied by giving them the actual solution. There's ways in which people all over the world feel compassion for others. That's why they'll go out of their way to start hospitals, to feed people who are needy and so forth. Ultimately, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the best way that you can help people in the world is to give them knowledge of their original relationship with Krishna. Just as a boy runs away from home, ends up in some far-flung city. He's estranged from his family is worried, disconsolate, sick with worry. Their boy's gone away. The boy then begins missing parents, but doesn't know how to come back. He begins begging at a stoplight for food, just so he can stay alive, buy a few potato chips. A friend of the family that lives in a faraway city just happens to be there in that town on that day, drives down the street, stops at the stoplight. Young boy comes up to the window, begging for something, needy. Two kinds of compassion, let's compare them. One is, the man rolls down the window. He says, here's $20. Go buy a whole case of potato chips. And he drives away. A deeper kind of compassion, real compassion. He rolls down the window and he says, hey, I know you. I know where you come from. I know your father and mother. They're worried sick about you. Please get in the car. I'll reconnect you to your parents. I'll take you back to where you actually live, where you can be safe. Which is better? This is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. He said, go everywhere. Go door to door, meet people, show your compassion by helping to reconnect them with their original relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any kind of superficial help may not be help at all, ultimately, if it doesn't reconnect people with Krishna. So you're in a very advanced situation because you have this compassion for others, you have a spiritual nature, and you can become an instrument for the Supreme Personality of Godhead by expressing his compassion for all living entities, by helping to give the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita to people that you know, or even people that you don't know. And in the Gita, Krishna says in the 18th chapter, anyone who does this is the most dear to me, becomes intimately connected with me. And therefore, one of the processes of Krishna consciousness, of connecting to Krishna, is actually in spreading Krishna consciousness to others. It's an active way of serving Krishna, of worshiping Krishna, because Krishna's there within the heart of every living being. Okay, that's all right. You don't have to know anything. Just like a child may not know what a microphone is. But if the father knows what a microphone is, and the child says, Daddy, what's this? And the father who knows what a microphone is says, that's a microphone. And then someone comes and asks the child, what is that? He says, a microphone. He said, how do you know? He said, my father told me. We don't have to know everything, but we do have to know who knows everything. That we have to know. And when we have a perfect source of knowledge, and whatever rudimentary way that we're following that, that's perfect. And that is the process of Krishna consciousness through parampara system. It's not blind following. It's well-reasoned faith. After studying the process of Krishna consciousness to understand how God is a person, how could he not be? Considering that there are creatures who are his creations. How could it be less than that? Then understanding just philosophically that if there is an all-knowing person and he's full of love, why wouldn't he want to reveal himself to us? It would be absurd to think that God would be eternally unavailable to us. And if we can reason that far, we can understand there must be a way in which he'll communicate with us directly. And if we can understand that there is an axiomatic truth or truths that come through the Bhagavad Gita and the ancient scriptures through which he speaks to us and gives us the means to follow him. If we begin following that to the best of our ability from whatever situation we're in now, we're in the perfect condition of life. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, Iha yasya harer dasya karmana manasa gira nikila apyavastastu jivan muktasu uchite. Those who are in this world, Iha means in this world, in this body, whatever situation they're in now, if they're following the process to the best of their ability with body, mind, and soul, they become liberated even within this very body. Shraddha.
I just wanted to say three things, Maharaj. One is that the devotee, the person who asked this question about compassion and how to feel motivated, I just wanted to add a little bit of personalization to that. Her name is Bhavna Anand, and she's Preeti Radhika's sister.
Really? Hare Krishna, welcome. Nice to have you. And it's not what you know, it's who you know that counts in life.
The second thing was I really liked the way you put it, that respect is another form of personalization. And you mentioned that face-to-face meetings are more effective than 34% more effective than writing emails.
Yes.
And I was just thinking of this Dhruv Maharaj's pastime in Srimad-Bhagavatam, where he was like for 6 months he was sending emails to Krishna, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. That's all it said. But then when he finally sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's a totally different transformation. He falls and starts kissing his feet, and he says, "Oh, what was I asking?" and things like that. Yeah. And then it goes even one step further when God touches him with the conch shell.
Personal
it's
touch.
A totally personal touch, a totally different.
Nicely done, yes. Yes, nice tied together. Prabhu, who's here? Oh, Gandharvika, and then we'll go 1, 2, 3. Hare Krishna.
Just a quick point. I remembered how you said that the personal connection is what is more important in our spiritual life, and actually that sustains us in Krishna consciousness. And I was just remembering how that's how Prabhupada started the movement, because of him, because of his personal relationship and the love that he showed, personal love that he had for Krishna. He was able to share it with people, and it attracted them, and it's still sustaining us like over many, many years, because the companies they start and it goes away. But ISKCON is still flourishing because of that love that he had, and his disciples are still carrying it and touching other people's hearts.
That's such a good point. If he hadn't have shown up personally, he came, he sat, he didn't have any other resource except for the personal touch. And because of that personal touch and offering the personal touch of Krishna through the holy names and knowing that that would touch people's hearts, that is what sustained. And you'll see any religious movement, it starts with a person somewhere. The Jesus movement. Jesus Christ walked around, came from Galilee, he went around And he actually met people, he touched their hearts, started in the very poorest places. Because at that time, he didn't have access to the big city in Jerusalem, but he went down to fishing villages, and the most insignificant of people, he began to give them teachings about God. He touched their hearts, they began to follow him. And from there, very improbable circumstance, he came from obscurity. He was just a carpenter in a small town. And he was able, through his personal touch, to spark a movement that to this day claims billions of people all over the world who are still following. Any movement that we find, there's a person behind it that had a very compassionate mood and gave some pointed instructions that people could follow. Okay, who is next? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, like you mentioned about the personal touch. I was looking at one of the company's philosophy, like they have the best product for communications like email, chat, or phones. But when it comes to the company's culture, what I found that they say that personal communication is more important. And they force employees that meet in person much better than emails. And they give free food so that you can sit together and communicate. So although they make one of the best product for impersonal communication, but but their personal belief is that within their own company, their belief is that personal communication is way more effective than to build a better product for impersonal communication.
Thank you. Verification. Yes. 1, 2. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
A very amazing lecture. There are two major leelas of Lord Krishna which comes to mind. One of the leela is, the major leela is actually one leela, the Brahma Vimohan leela. It starts with everything personal. When Krishna is sitting in the center and there are like the gopas which are all around, so they get a feeling that Krishna is looking only at me. So that is that personal connection what Krishna builds. And then after that, when everyone is taken away, then again Krishna tries to give that personal connection. So sometime in Kali Yuga, people might feel that where can I find that kind of gesture from the Lord? That is in Rath Yatra. So if you go to Rath Yatra, even if you are at the last person who's about to pull the rope, when you see Lord's eyes, it will look like he's only looking at you. He'll not look at anybody else. So in Jagannath Puri. So if somebody wants to revisit that experience, Rath Yatra is the closest I have been to that experience.
Well, thank you for bringing Krishna Leela to this and such important and pointed pastimes that you brought up. Even in the pastime of the Brahma Vimohana Leela, when Krishna sits with all his friends to have lunch, the cows or the calves at that time wandered off into the faraway pastures, being allured by newer and newer grasses. The boys, being entranced in watching Krishna, laughing with him, forgot about the calves until they looked up and saw that they had wandered away. So they became anxious and they wanted to go and find the calves. But Krishna said, no, you please take your lunch and I'll go get them. And all our acharyas comment in this section of Brahma Vimohana Leela that this is Krishna's nature, that he cares for every individual soul. Now this is amazing because the living entities are called asankhya, it means they're uncountable. But Krishna individually cares for each one of them, each one of us. He individually fulfills all of our desires. Here in the material world, whatever we want, he makes an arrangement for that. And when one becomes interested in spiritual life, Krishna takes a very personal interest in every living entity, and he says in the Gita, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami bhuti yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. I personally help that soul to come closer to me. I do everything to arrange how he or she can come closer. And this is Krishna's mood, always trying to help the living entity and to serve the devotees in a very personal way. Thank you so much. Kanka, and right after Kanka, we're going to have some personal meetings here. You'll see what it's like to meet somebody personally. Don't freak out. Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to address the person that was talking about the frustration of seeing all the suffering in the material world.
Yeah, what is your name? Her name is Bhavana.
Bhavana.
Bhavana or Pavana? Bhavana.
Bhavana. My name's Kanka.
Bhavana? This is Kanka speaking directly about you, personally.
Okay, personal account of, okay. When I was young, before I became a Hare Krishna devotee, I felt the same way you felt, that there was extreme suffering in the world, and that people, not only people, but just as also animals. I became a vegetarian when I was 16 because I didn't like the way they treated animals. So I understand what you're saying, but for me, it was finding this personal philosophy that Prabhupada gave us and reading Prabhupada's books that helped me understand that no matter what I did, like as far as if I wanted to work at a hospital or if I wanted to help people by demonstrating in the streets against the Vietnam War or whatever I did, it wasn't going to be as powerful as chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Because the mantra, I heard Prabhupada say on a class yesterday, the mantra is so powerful that this is how we can bring peace and love to this world.
Thank you, Kanka. And thank you, Bhavana. Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming here on a Sunday, and for everyone who joined us online from various places around the world. Please keep in mind that personal is what we're after. The greatest of all personalities and the source of all personality is Lord Sri Krishna himself. And when we turn our attention fully to him and personally serve him, we'll find the satisfaction and happiness that we've always been looking for. And when we become an instrument for his love and give that to as many people as possible in the world, then we'll have the most worthy of occupations. And we'll find the most rewarding lifestyle, and that's what's offered here at the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not only here, but all over the world, by the grace of the founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.